Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to today's lesson on the respiratory system. In our last lesson, we learned about oral hygiene. We discussed reasons why it is important to maintain oral hygiene, and we explained methods of keeping the mouth and teeth clean. We also looked at the structure of a tooth and learned the terms enamel, dentine, and pulp cavity. Today, our lesson focuses on the respiratory system. We will begin this lesson by learning about the breathing structures, and we will closely examine the structure of the lungs. Let us begin. Students, let us start with an activity. You will choose a partner and keep track of how many breaths your partner takes in 1 minute. The person who is the breather should sit quietly while their partner watches them and counts the number of breaths that are taken. Make sure to count 1 breath every time the stomach or chest rises. After 1 minute, trade places with your partner and do the activity again. Are you ready? You may begin.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Hello, students. Please trade places with your partner and do the activity again.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back. Breathing is a necessary and automatic life process. As you can see from the results of our activity, you take an average of 12 to 20 breaths per minute. Look at your number of breaths. Do you think this number would be different if you recorded your breaths after running through a field for 10 minutes? Do you think the number would be different when you are asleep? The respiratory system is adapted to bring in as much oxygen into your body and remove waste carbon dioxide produced by your cells as they work. So, if your cells are working hard, like when you are running, you will take more breaths. If your cells are resting, like when you are asleep, you will take fewer breaths. Breathing begins with the nose. The nose contains nasal passages which have a large surface area, a good supply of blood, lots of hairs, and a lining that secretes mucus. The hair and mucus work to filter out dust, particles, and airborne bacteria that are breathed in, while the moist surface and rich blood supply make the air humid and warm. The air from the nasal passageway moves down into the trachea and passes the esophagus. As we learned in our studies on digestion, the esophagus is the entranceway into the gut. Air does enter the gut and simply comes out of the body in the form of a belch. However, food cannot enter the airway or lungs because it can prevent breathing or cause an infection. To ensure this does not happen, the epiglottis closes off the trachea every time you swallow in a reflex action. The larynx, or voice box, sits on top of the trachea. Air that leaves the lungs over the vocal cords in the larynx produces the sounds that are used in speech. The trachea is supported by a series of rings of cartilage shaped like the letter C. Cartilage is a smooth, rubbery material that reduces friction and cushions joints. The cartilage is shaped like a half circle so food can be swallowed. The esophagus and trachea are side by side. If the trachea had full circle rings, the food that moves down the esophagus would press against the trachea and cause pain. Mucus is secreted from the lining of the trachea, which, like the surface of the nose, collects bacteria and particles. The cells that line the trachea are covered in cilia, which are tiny moving hairs. They work to move the mucus that contains collected particles and dirt away from the lungs and towards the mouth. The mucus is swallowed, digested, or coughed up. The trachea is split into two tubes called bronchi. There is a left bronchus and right bronchus, and each leads into a lung. Like the trachea, the bronchi are also supported by a ring of cartilage. The bronchi divide into smaller tubes called bronchioles inside the lung. The bronchioles divide into even smaller tubes until they reach the main structure of the lungs called alveoli. Alveoli are tiny air sacs in the lungs that provide a large surface area for the exchange of gases to take place. Students, let us do an activity to put what we have just learned to the test. Complete the following statements about respiration by filling in the blanks.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, everyone. How did you do? Let us go through the answers together. The main organs of respiration are the nose, trachea, bronchi, and lungs. Everyone has a set of 2 lungs. Air is carried into the body from the nose by nasal passages. The trachea is a tube that allows air to go to the lungs. Great work today, students. We have time for one last activity. Please label the following diagram with structures we learned about today.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
I am glad to have you back. Your diagram should be labeled like this: nasal passages, larynx, trachea, left bronchus, right bronchus, lungs, bronchiole, and alveoli. I am sure you all did an excellent job. This brings us to the end of our lesson. Today, we learned about respiration by studying the structures of the respiration system. Until next time, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.